when you're looking at Fmod, you are primarily looking at events. These events can then interact with everything else. So the most simple event is going to be I drag an audio file in, I press play, and it plays. Now, anytime that that event is either dragged into a scene in Unreal or Unity or triggered by code, it will play that audio file. So that's how it's working. There are these other things called parameters, and what parameters are going to do, you can set them to automation. So instead of having automation follow, say, a timeline, you can have automation follow a set list of numbers. So let's say I have a volume. I want to create a way to automatically lower the volume once the volume down button is pressed. So I can set a parameter from 0 to 10, for example. That's actually what I have in the project, and have 10 be where the music is at its full volume and 0 is where it's muted. Make a programmer's life much much easier. So, greatest example that is always thrown out is volume. Um, so let's say UI wise, you always want to sound when volume is being decreased so that people know that when they press something, that something is actually happening, right? Even though you see the bar move, you want to hear something so that you can verify that the bar is definitely moving. Um, so that would create one event. And then there also has to be a parameter that increments volume. So then a programmer has to type in that I don't know C++ very well, but then a programmer would have to do all of this stuff and they would have to be like, uh, every single time you press X button, then parameter goes down. And then also every single time the value of the parameters decreasing, you need to press you need to play this sound or this event. It's a pain. It sounds awful. So what I can do to make that much easier is use a command instrument. So there are four things that a command instrument can do, but we're going to focus on one of them, which is increment parameter. So every single time so how a command instrument works is every single time it gets passed over by a cursor, um, unless said otherwise, because you can trigger it with like external conditions. Every single time the cursor passes over it, it will do whatever that command is. So in this case, we're going to go increment, and we can set it to a positive value or a negative value. So every time the cursor runs over it, it will, if it's 1, then it will increase the parameter by 1, and if it's negative 1, it will decrease the parameter by 1. So in this example, I can create a event that has the volume up, or let's say volume down sound, and then under it set a command instrument so that every single time that event plays, not only does the sound play, but also the volume parameter is incremented downwards by -1. So now a programmer just has to be like, oh, when X button is pressed, call this event. And then they don't have to worry about the rest of it. So this is the Fmod project. First, we're just going to start with the brewing menu. So everything in green is the ambience, and then we'll scroll down to all the command instruments. So these command instruments actually, they can play at any time, and once they are activated, they will play a certain sound of a certain ingredient being dropped in. So I'm clicking on fire. It will start the fire event only if fire is active. So if I go ahead and play that and swap the parameter to fire, the fire sound will play. And then every single ingredient I put in, it adds an additional thing to the progress bar, and you need 3 ingredients to finish out the thing. So how is that working? Great question. Glad you asked. Essentially, there's another command event on the general like plop sounds, and every single time that is played, it will add a value to the number of ingredients. So that will play no matter. Yeah. So that's just a basic little drop sound, and so that plays before every single element event, um, and it'll play down there, and then it will play the specified event, which would look like this. I should have done this in the opposite order, now that I'm realizing it. Anyways, so that works like that. Once it hits 3, it'll play a little jingle, which is under Potion Brewed, and that is on the master track, which also has another command instrument. Which once that value hits 3, then it will play a Potion Brewed event. Now, the Potion Brewed event is actually kind of complicated. It has 2 things on it. So it has queuing a snapshot, which is called Brewed Duck, which will duck all other sounds besides the brewed event, and will also reset the counter once it's done playing after a certain point. So now we move on to the cassette. So the cassette is actually relatively simple. You have a track just playing some fast forward and rewind sounds, and then you have a track playing some mechanical sounds. And then you have the start and stop. So if a parameter is set to 1, it will play a certain channel. If it's set to 2, it'll play another channel, and those will loop until something is changed. So it's actually relatively simple. It kind of messes with itself, so I didn't really have to program anything super complicated. That is how you change channels, is it'll play a little click sound, and under the click sound there's a command instrument, which then tells a parameter to do something else. I probably should have a section in here explaining what the fuck parameters are. And I can make sure all the snapshots and everything are working the way that they're supposed to. Then I can check out the cassette. For some reason, the test for changing channels was removed, but the test for volume was not. I don't know what happened there. I'll be honest, it was there the last time I opened it. I might have accidentally deleted it. I tried to drag it in. Didn't work. Oh well. Let's go over to the mixer view. So the mixer view, like in any other DAW, it looks just like a typical mixer. You're going to have a channel for ambience, which is all your bubbles and brews and wind and stuff. All the mechanical noises that the cassette is making. And also, I learned how to do all of the music processing in one singular bus so that I don't have to do it on every single channel and run up a shit ton of processing power. And then, of course, there is a VCA that controls the brewed duct. So anytime that is activated and the snapshot is played, it will duck the volume so that you can hear only the brew little jingle. So now let's move on over to me 2 weeks ago when I recorded this ahead of time. So you see the only sounds that are playing, one of those volume control is actually a snapshot, and push and brewing menu is just the bubbling and fire and whatnot. And then there is the camera that shows the player what they're going to be seeing. And I made that little scene myself. I'm kind of proud. And then there is a cassette player blueprint. Anyway, so this is a button. This is how the up and down actually works. So they're basically playing these events that already have commands in them to set a parameter up to a certain point. Okay, so then here's what it actually sounds like. So now we have our little buttons that I designed earlier that make the volume go up and down. I wanted it to be cassette E, so it has a little like fast forward, rewind sort of thing going on. But it works. Did it take a day to make it work? Yes. Does it work? Yes. Yippee, yippee.